June 6, 1944. Normandy beaches, dawn breaking grey. German observers watch Allied landing craft. Sherman tanks emerge through morning smoke. The concrete observation bunker trembled with each impact of naval gunfire, dust cascading from reinforced ceiling as Obergefreiter Klaus Weber pressed his face against the narrow firing slit. 6:15 in the morning, and the Channel surf carried the grinding sound of tracked vehicles struggling up the shingle of Omaha Beach. Through his Zeiss binoculars, Weber watched the first American Sherman tanks lumber off their landing craft. Metal beasts, painted in olive drab, that seemed pathetically vulnerable against the Atlantic Wall's prepared defences. Mein Gott, Weber muttered to his loader, Heinrich Schaefer. Look at those Panzers, tin cans with tracks. The morning mist carried the acrid smell of cordite and burning fuel as Wehrmacht artillery found their range. Already, 3 Sherman tanks burned on the beach, black smoke spiralling into the grey Norman sky. Weber counted the armour thickness through his optics, perhaps 32 millimetres on the frontal hull, maybe 38 on the turret face. Laughable compared to his regiment's Panzer IV tanks with their 80 millimetre frontal protection. In Panzer Regiment 130, positioned 3 kilometres inland near Vierville-sur-Mer, Hauptmann Ernst Müller monitored the coastal battle through his radio headset. The morning reports crackled through static. Multiple enemy armour landing. Estimate 30 to 40 medium tanks. Armour appears thin. Request permission to engage. Müller smiled grimly, studying the tactical map spread across his Panzer IV's turret. American Sherman tanks, 2A. He'd read the intelligence reports from Tunisia and Italy. The M4 Sherman mounted a pathetic 75mm gun with mediocre penetration capabilities. German Panzerfaust teams had nicknamed them Tommy Cookers and Ronson Lighters after the American cigarette lighter advertisement. Lights up every time. One hit from his Panzer's long-barreled gun would penetrate that thin armour like paper. The Wehrmacht intelligence assessment, distributed just 2 weeks earlier, had been remarkably dismissive. Enemy M4 medium tank represents minimal threat to German armour. 32mm frontal armour easily penetrated by standard anti-tank weapons. Crew survivability poor due to ammunition storage design. Through the morning haze, Weber watched more Sherman tanks struggle up the beach obstacles. Some bogged down in the sand, others struck mines that lifted their thin hulls and scattered track links across the shingle. The Wehrmacht had prepared for this moment for 4 years, constructing the Atlantic Wall with interlocking fields of fire and concealed anti-tank positions. These American tanks would die, just like their predecessors in North Africa. Heinrich, Weber called to his loader, ready armour piercing, range 800 metres. But something nagged at Weber's tactical instincts as he watched the American armour deployment. Despite the casualties, despite the obvious vulnerability of individual tanks, they kept coming. Landing craft discharged Sherman after Sherman onto the blood-soaked beach. His binoculars revealed details that Wehrmacht intelligence reports hadn't mentioned. External telephone boxes welded to tank hulls, multiple radio antennas, coordination between vehicles that seemed almost supernatural. By 7:30 in the morning, Weber had counted over 60 Sherman tanks successfully landed on his sector alone. Intelligence estimates suggested the Americans might land 200 tanks across all 5 invasion beaches. 200 tanks seemed manageable. Panzer Regiment 130 alone fielded 42 Panzer IV tanks and 18 assault guns. What Weber couldn't see from his concrete bunker was the industrial capacity those Sherman tanks represented. American factories had already produced over 20,000 Sherman tanks by June 1944, with production rates exceeding 1,500 tanks monthly. Henry Ford's Willow Run plant could assemble a complete Sherman tank every 63 minutes. The morning radio chatter from Panzer Regiment 130 reflected confident German professionalism Tank commanders shared target assignments, discussed ammunition selection for penetrating thin American armor, and coordinated with infantry units. Their voices carried the assurance of technical superiority and tactical experience gained in 3 years of armored warfare. None suspected they were witnessing the first deployment of industrial warfare on a scale that would render individual tank superiority irrelevant. The laughter echoing through German radio nets that morning would prove tragically premature. June 10th, 1944. 4 days after the landings, the Norman bocage revealed its secrets to both armies. Ancient hedgerows carved the countryside into a maze of small fields bordered by earthen banks, topped with impenetrable thickets. Each field became a potential killing ground, each gap in the hedgerow a fatal funnel where German anti-tank guns waited in ambush. Obergefreiter Weber had repositioned his Pak-40 gun to a concealed position behind a stone farmhouse near Le Camp. The morning dew still clung to the hedgerow thorns when he heard the distinctive rumble of Sherman tank engines approaching from the northeast. Through his periscope sight, Weber counted 5 American tanks moving in single file along the narrow farm lane, their olive-drab hulls barely visible above the ancient earthworks. "Easy targets," Weber whispered to Heinrich. "They'll have to come through that gap one at a time." But the Sherman tanks didn't behave according to German tactical doctrine. Instead of advancing in predictable formation, they scattered into positions that violated everything Wehrmacht training manuals taught about armoured movement. The lead Sherman stopped short of the obvious gap, its turret traversing slowly, as if the commander inside possessed supernatural awareness of Weber's concealed position. From his Tiger tank, hidden in an apple orchard 800 meters southeast, Hauptmann Karl Brenner watched the American armor deployment with growing unease. His radio crackled with reports. Enemy tanks moving in coordination, no visible signals between vehicles, recommend immediate engagement. Brenner had spent 3 years perfecting tank combat from Russia to Italy. German doctrine emphasized individual tank superiority, ATA. The Tiger's 88mm gun could penetrate any Allied armor at ranges exceeding 2 kilometers. Yet, something about American tactical behavior defied his accumulated experience. These Sherman tanks moved with coordination that suggested communication capabilities German intelligence had never documented. The first engagement shattered German expectations. Weber's Pak-40 fired at the lead Sherman from 600 meters, a perfect flank shot that should have penetrated the thin side armor and ignited the ammunition storage. The armor-piercing round struck the Sherman's turret side and ricocheted harmlessly into the hedgerow. Before Weber could reload, 3 other Sherman tanks emerged from concealed positions he hadn't even known existed, their 75mm guns already trained on his position. "Impossible," Weber muttered, watching his camouflaged position being systematically destroyed by coordinated fire from tanks that couldn't possibly see each other through the bocage terrain. How did they know where we were? The answer lay in technology German commanders didn't understand. Each Sherman tank carried an SCR-508 radio system with crystal-controlled frequency stability and 25 watts of transmission power. While Weber's pack gun crew communicated through hand signals and shouted commands, American tank crews maintained constant radio contact, sharing target information and coordinating movements with precision that seemed supernatural to German observers. Brenner's Tiger tank achieved its first kill at 7:45 in the morning, the 88mm gun penetrating a Sherman's frontal armor at 1,200 meters. The American tank erupted in flames, its ammunition cooking off in a spectacular fireball that briefly satisfied German expectations about enemy vulnerability. But within minutes, 2 replacement Sherman tanks appeared from directions Brenner hadn't anticipated, their movements coordinated through radio communications that kept them outside his gun's traverse limits. The psychological impact on German tank crews began that morning in the Norman hedgerows. Panzer tactics had always emphasized individual combat excellence, NAS, superior armor, superior guns, superior crew training, creating battlefield dominance through technical superiority. Yet American Sherman tanks fought as coordinated teams, sharing information instantly, covering each other's blind spots, and concentrating firepower against German positions with timing that defied traditional tactical assumptions. By noon, Panzer Regiment 130 had lost 6 tanks to American forces they couldn't effectively coordinate against. German radio communications, limited to command vehicles and plagued by static interference, couldn't match American coordination capabilities. Tank commanders, accustomed to fighting individual duels, found themselves facing pack tactics that rendered technical superiority meaningless. The Bocage fighting revealed America's first tactical adaptation that German doctrine had never anticipated. Sherman tanks, individually inferior to German armor, fought as components of a larger weapon system that included every other American tank within radio range. This coordination created collective capabilities that exceeded individual tank performances, a mathematical advantage German commanders struggled to comprehend. Wehrmacht after-action reports from June 10th noted unusual American coordination, but attributed it to superior training rather than technological capability. German intelligence still failed to grasp that every Sherman tank carried sophisticated radio equipment. The laughter had begun to fade from German radio transmissions. July 25, 1944, 7:30 in the morning, Saint-Lô sector. The ground trembled beneath General de Panzertruppen Fritz Bayerlein as he crouched in his command bunker, studying aerial reconnaissance photographs that revealed the impossible. American forces had concentrated over 2,400 bombers for Operation Cobra, a carpet bombing assault that would precede the largest armoured breakthrough attempt since D-Day. Bayerlein commanded Panzer Lehr Division, Germany's elite demonstration unit comprising the Wehrmacht's most experienced tank instructors and crews. His 42 remaining Panzer IV tanks and 18 Panther tanks represented the cream of German armoured warfare doctrine, positioned behind prepared defensive lines that should have stopped any conventional attack. Yet, the reconnaissance photographs showed American Sherman tanks massing in numbers that defied tactical logic. Herr General, reported Oberst Gerhard Teber, his chief of staff, voice tight with suppressed panic. Intelligence estimates place American armoured strength at over 400 tanks in this sector alone, 400 Shermans against our 60 operational panzers. The mathematics should have favoured German forces. Each Panzer IV mounted a long-barreled 75mm gun capable of penetrating Sherman armour at ranges exceeding 1,500 metres. The Panther tanks, with their high-velocity 75mm guns, could destroy American armour at distances approaching 2 kilometres. German crew training emphasised individual marksmanship and tactical excellence that had dominated European battlefields for 3 years. But at 8:15 in the morning, the sky disappeared. 2,400 American bombers unleashed 7,000 tons of high explosives across a rectangular killing zone measuring 7 kilometres by 2.5 kilometres. The earth convulsed with impacts that registered on seismographs in London. Concrete bunkers collapsed, communication lines severed, and German defensive positions simply ceased to exist under the weight of American industrial capacity translated into explosive power. Bayerlein's command bunker lost contact with forward positions within the first 10 minutes. His radio operator, Gefreiter Hans Müller, frantically worked the dials of their command radio, receiving only static where regimental networks had operated moments before. The carpet bombing had destroyed not just defensive positions, but the communication infrastructure that enabled German tactical coordination. "Sir, "I'm getting reports from the 3rd Battalion," Muller suddenly announced, voice barely audible above the continuing explosions. "They report enemy armor advancing in mass formation. Estimated strength, mein Gott. They estimate over 200 tanks advancing on their position alone." Through the reinforced observation slit, Bayerlein witnessed something that violated everything his 20 years of military experience had taught him about armored warfare. Sherman tanks advanced not in careful tactical formations, but in waves, like an industrial tide of olive-drab steel. Where German doctrine emphasized careful coordination between individual vehicles, American forces deployed armor with the methodical precision of factory production. The American advance began at 9:45 in the morning. Sherman tanks rolled forward through the cratered landscape at speeds that German tactical manuals said were impossible for coordinated armored movement. Yet every American tank maintained perfect alignment, responding to threats with coordination that suggested communication capabilities far beyond German understanding. Hauptmann Werner Stief, commanding the division's 2nd Panzer Company, reported the first contact over the division radio net. "Enemy tanks advancing in regimental strength. Count exceeds 100 Shermans in my sector. Request immediate artillery support." Bayerlein's artillery commander, Major Klaus Weber, could only respond with devastating honesty. "Artillery positions destroyed in bombing. No fire support available. You are on your own." Individual German tank crews achieved their expected kill ratios during the first hour of combat. Panzer IV tanks destroyed Sherman after Sherman at ranges where American return fire proved ineffective. Stief's company alone claimed 17 Sherman kills before 10:30 in the morning, a tactical success that should have broken any conventional armored attack. But American industrial capacity had redefined the mathematics of attrition warfare. For every Sherman tank destroyed, 2 more appeared from reserve positions. American logistics delivered replacement tanks faster than German gunners could destroy them, creating a tactical equation that rendered individual combat superiority meaningless. "They're replacing them faster than we can kill them," Stief reported at 11:15, his voice betraying the first notes of panic. "Every time we destroy a tank, another one takes its position. It's like fighting a factory." The psychological impact on German tank crews proved as devastating as the material losses. Panzer commanders accustomed to battlefield dominance through technical superiority found themselves overwhelmed by sheer numbers backed by industrial logistics they couldn't comprehend. American coordination capabilities allowed Sherman tanks to concentrate firepower against German positions while maintaining tactical flexibility that German radio limitations couldn't match. By noon, Panzer-Lehr Division had lost 38 tanks to American forces that seemed to multiply rather than diminish under German fire. Bayerlein's after-action report, filed 3 days later, captured the psychological transformation. "Enemy demonstrates coordination and replacement capabilities that render individual tank superiority irrelevant. Our training emphasized defeating superior enemy tanks, not defeating an entire industrial system made manifest in armor." The breakthrough at St. Lo revealed the true nature of American armored doctrine. Sherman tanks weren't designed to match German technical superiority, but to overwhelm German tactical capabilities through coordinated mass production warfare. Individual Sherman tanks might burn under German fire, but the industrial capacity they represented proved unstoppable. German mockery had encountered American methodology. The laughter died in the Norman hedgerows that afternoon. August 19th, 1944, 4:15 in the morning, the Falaise pocket. General der Panzertruppen, Heinrich Eberbach, pressed his field glasses against the observation port of his command half-track, watching the distant muzzle flashes that marked the perimeter of Germany's greatest military disaster since Stalingrad. Trapped within a shrinking cauldron of Norman countryside, 325,000 German troops faced encirclement by American and Canadian forces, whose coordination defied everything Wehrmacht doctrine taught about mobile warfare. The pocket measured barely 20 kilometers at its widest point, compressed between American Sherman tanks advancing from the south and British armour pushing down from the north. But it was the western face of the encirclement that revealed the true transformation in German military thinking. Where once panzer crews had mocked American armour as inferior, they now faced an impenetrable wall of Sherman tanks that stretched across the horizon like an industrial manifestation of American manufacturing capacity. Oberst Kurt Meyer, commanding the remnants of the 12th SS Panzer Division, reported through the crackling radio net, "Enemy armour density exceeds anything in our tactical manuals. Conservative count places over 800 Sherman tanks on our front alone. 800 tanks, Herr General. We have 37 operational panzers remaining." The mathematics had become impossible. German panzer divisions that had entered Normandy with full complements of tanks now counted their operational vehicles in dozens, while American armoured strength seemed to multiply with each passing hour. Every German tank destroyed represented irreplaceable combat experience and industrial capacity that could not be replaced. Every American Sherman knocked out was replaced within hours by fresh vehicles crewed by trained personnel flowing from stateside training centres. Eberbach studied the tactical map spread across his half-track's cramped interior, red arrows marking German positions growing smaller with each updated report. His radio operator, Feldwebel Anton Richter, maintained contact with scattered German units through increasingly desperate transmissions that revealed the scope of their predicament. "2nd Panzer Division reports fuel exhaustion," Richter announced, voice steady despite the situation's hopelessness. "They estimate 40% combat effectiveness, ammunition critical for all units." The American response to German attempts at breakout demonstrated coordination that violated every assumption about Allied tactical capabilities. When the 2nd Panzer Division attempted to punch through American lines near Chambord at 6:30 in the morning, they faced Sherman tanks that responded to their attack with timing that suggested supernatural awareness of German intentions. Hauptmann Wilhelm Ziegert, commanding the division's lead company, reported the engagement over the radio net. "Enemy coordination impossible to understand. Our panzers engage targets to our front, but American tanks appear on our flanks before we complete our attack. They know where we're going before we get there." The answer lay in American radio capabilities that German commanders still failed to comprehend fully. Each Sherman tank carried SCR 508 radios with crystal-controlled frequency stability and 25 watts of transmission power that enabled coordination across distances where German communications produced only static. American tank commanders shared targeting information instantly, coordinated mutual support automatically, and concentrated firepower against German positions with mathematical precision that reduced individual German tank superiority to statistical irrelevance. But beyond technological advantages, the Falaise pocket revealed the psychological transformation that American industrial capacity had wrought on German military thinking. Panzer crews who had entered France, confident in their technical superiority, now fought with the desperate knowledge that they faced not just enemy tanks, but the entire productive capacity of American industry translated into armoured warfare. "It's not just the tanks," reported Major Hans Stolberg from his Tiger tank concealed in an apple orchard near Trun. "Every Sherman we destroy gets replaced. Every crew we kill gets replaced. We're fighting their factories, not just their army." The killing field within the Falaise pocket became a laboratory for observing American mass-production warfare in action. German positions that destroyed Sherman tanks at ranges exceeding 1,500 meters watched new American armor appear within hours, crewed by personnel trained in American tank schools, supplied by logistics networks that delivered spare parts faster than German workshops could repair battle damage. Eberbuch's intelligence officer, Hauptmann Franz Weber, compiled reports that revealed the scale of American industrial achievement. Enemy tank replacement rate exceeds our ability to inflict losses. Conservative estimates suggest Americans can replace Sherman tanks at twice the rate we can destroy them. Our kill ratios are meaningless against industrial capacity of this magnitude. The psychological impact on German tank crews proved as devastating as the material losses. Veterans, who had dominated battlefields from Poland to Russia, found themselves outmatched not by superior enemy tanks, but by superior enemy logistics. American coordination capabilities allowed Sherman tanks to fight as components of a larger weapons system that included every other American tank within radio range, creating collective capabilities that exceeded individual German technical advantages. By noon on August 19th, the German breakout attempts had failed catastrophically. Panzer units that achieved initial tactical success found themselves surrounded by American armor that appeared with coordination timing that German radio capabilities couldn't match. The encirclement tightened with mechanical precision that reflected American industrial methodology applied to battlefield tactics. Wehrmacht after-action reports from the Falaise pocket marked the moment when German mockery transformed into grudging respect, then into fear. American Sherman tanks had proven that individual technical superiority meant nothing against coordinated mass-production warfare backed by industrial logistics that could replace losses faster than German forces could inflict them. The laughter had died. In its place came the silence of professionals, recognizing they faced capabilities beyond their tactical comprehension. September 15th, 1944, 2:30 in the afternoon, east of Metz. The autumn rain drummed against the steel hull of Hauptmann Georg Baker's Panther tank as he studied the muddy French countryside through his commander's periscope. Behind him stretched the longest retreat in German military history, a 1,000-kilometre withdrawal from the Normandy beaches to the approaches of the Reich itself. Ahead lay the Moselle River and the last natural defensive barrier before Germany's industrial heartland. Baker commanded the remnants of the 5th Panzer Army's 47th Panzer Corps, 63 tanks and assault guns representing all that remained of Germany's mobile reserve in the west. His radio operator, Unteroffizier Franz Steiner, maintained contact with scattered German units falling back toward the Siegfried Line, their transmissions carrying reports that revealed the scope of American pursuit capabilities. American armor advancing on multiple axes, Steiner reported, voice betraying exhaustion that reflected weeks of continuous combat. 3rd Armored Division, estimated at 200 Sherman tanks, advancing at 20 km per hour. 4th Armored Division, maintaining parallel advance to our south. Estimated American armored strength in this sector exceeds 600 tanks. The pursuit phase of warfare had traditionally favored German tactical doctrine. Panzer units excelled at mobile defense, using superior crew training and technical advantages to slow enemy advances through calculated withdrawals and counterattacks. Yet American Sherman tanks pursued with relentless efficiency that transformed retreat into rout, maintaining contact with German forces across distances that exceeded German radio capabilities. Baker's Panther tank mounted the finest tank gun in the world, a high-velocity 75mm cannon capable of penetrating any Allied armour at ranges approaching 3 kilometres. His crew represented 5 years of combat experience from Poland to Russia, tactical knowledge acquired through battles that had forged the Wehrmacht into Europe's premier fighting force. Yet none of this experience prepared them for fighting American industrial capacity, made manifest in coordinated armoured pursuit. The sound reached them first, a mechanical rumble that seemed to emerge from the earth itself rather than any individual vehicles. Through the autumn mist, Bakey counted the muzzle flashes of approaching Sherman tanks, dozens of olive-drab hulls advancing in formations that maintained perfect alignment despite the broken terrain. American coordination capabilities allowed them to pursue at speeds that German tactical manuals said were impossible for armoured formations. Contact front, reported Obergefreiter Klaus Weber from his position in the Panther's gunner seat. Range 1800 meters. Count main got. Count exceeds 40 enemy tanks advancing on our position. The first engagement demonstrated both German technical superiority and its ultimate irrelevance against American numbers. Weber's first shot penetrated a Sherman's frontal armor at extreme range, the American tank erupting in flames that briefly validated German confidence in individual combat excellence. His second shot destroyed another Sherman at 1,500 meters, proving that German guns retained their lethal advantage over American armor. But American industrial logic had redefined the mathematics of armored combat. For every Sherman tank Bake's company destroyed, American logistics delivered 2 replacements. Tank transporters carrying fresh Sherman tanks appeared on roads behind American advance units, delivering armor faster than German guns could destroy it. American coordination allowed damaged tanks to withdraw for repair, while fresh vehicles maintained contact with German forces. They're not fighting like soldiers, observed Feldwebel Anton Richter from his position as Bake's loader. They're fighting like a factory. Every tank we kill gets replaced by 2 more. The psychological impact on German tank crews reflected their growing understanding that they faced not just enemy army, but enemy industrial capacity. American Sherman tanks advanced with mechanical precision that reflected mass production methodology applied to battlefield tactics. Individual German tactical superiority meant nothing against coordination capabilities that treated tank losses as acceptable production costs rather than irreplaceable combat assets. By 4:15 in the afternoon, Bake's company had destroyed 18 Sherman tanks while losing 7 of their own Panther tanks to concentrated American fire. Traditional tactical mathematics suggested German victory, yet American forces continued advancing with undiminished strength. Radio intercepts revealed American commanders discussing tank replacements with the casual efficiency of factory supervisors managing production schedules. Enemy tank strength appears unlimited, Bake reported to Corps headquarters as his remaining tanks withdrew toward prepared positions near the Moselle. Our kill ratios remain favorable, but American replacement capabilities negate tactical success. Recommend immediate reinforcement or strategic withdrawal to prepared defensive lines. The response from higher headquarters reflected German command's growing comprehension of their predicament. No reinforcements available. American industrial capacity exceeds our ability to inflict meaningful attrition. Continue withdrawal to Siegfried Line positions. The race across France had become a pursuit by American industrial capacity personified in Sherman tanks that advanced with relentless efficiency. German technical superiority, proven in individual engagements, proved meaningless against logistics that could replace American losses faster than German forces could inflict them. The mockery had transformed into desperate recognition that they fought not just American tanks, but American factories. October 28, 1944, 8:15 in the morning, Lorraine sector. The first frost of winter clung to the steel surfaces of Major Wilhelm Stemmermann's Tiger II tank as he positioned his vehicle in a carefully prepared hull-down position overlooking the Saale River Valley. This was the warfare German doctrine had been designed for: prepared defensive positions, interlocking fields of fire, and technical superiority concentrated against predictable enemy attack routes. Stemmermann commanded the 2nd Company of Heavy Tank Battalion 503, equipped with 12 of Germany's most advanced tanks. The Tiger II mounted the legendary 88mm K-43 gun, capable of penetrating any Allied armour at ranges exceeding 2.5 kilometres. Its frontal armor, 150 millimeters thick and sloped at optimal angles, could deflect any known Allied anti-tank weapon. German engineers had finally created the perfect defensive tank. American reconnaissance elements approaching from Grid 472, reported his gunner, Obergefreiter Hans Müller, voice carrying the confidence of 3 years combat experience. Range 2,200 meters. Single Sherman tank, moving cautiously. Through his commander's cupola, Stemmermann studied the approaching American forces with professional interest. This was the engagement scenario German training emphasized: long-range gunnery against inferior enemy armor from prepared positions that maximized German technical advantages. His Tiger II could destroy Sherman tanks at ranges where American return fire proved ineffective. But something about American reconnaissance behavior troubled Stemmermann's tactical instincts. The lead Sherman tank moved with deliberate caution, its commander clearly aware of German positions, yet advancing with confidence that suggested capabilities German intelligence hadn't documented. American coordination seemed to operate on principles that violated traditional reconnaissance doctrine. Multiple enemy contacts, Müller announced at 8:35, his voice tightening with concentration. Count 12, 15. 20 Sherman tanks, advancing in dispersed formation, range 1,800 meters, and closing. The engagement began according to German expectations. Müller's first shot at 1,600 meters penetrated a Sherman's frontal armor, the American tank erupting in the spectacular fireball that had earned them their Ronson Leiter nickname. His second shot destroyed another Sherman at 1,400 meters, validating German confidence in individual combat superiority. Yet American tactical response defied German understanding of how tank units should react to casualties. Instead of withdrawing or seeking cover, American Sherman tanks continued advancing with coordination that suggested communication capabilities far beyond German radio limitations. They moved with mechanical precision, each vehicle supporting others in ways that created collective capabilities exceeding individual tank performance. Enemy coordination impossible, reported Feldwebel Klaus Weber from his position as radio operator. Our intelligence suggests American tank radios have limited range, yet they're coordinating across the entire battlefield. Every Sherman seems to know where every other Sherman is positioned. The reality was that each American Sherman tank carried an SCR 508 radio system with crystal-controlled frequency stability and 25 watts of transmission power. While German radio communications suffered from static interference and limited range, American crews maintained constant contact across distances where German equipment produced only noise. This technological advantage transformed individual Sherman tanks into components of a battlefield network that German tactical doctrine had never envisioned. By 9:15 in the morning, Stemmermann's company had destroyed 8 Sherman tanks while suffering no losses of their own. Traditional tactical mathematics suggested decisive German victory, yet American forces continued their advance with undiminished coordination. More troubling was the speed of American tank replacement. The Barcemo-Main fresh Sherman tanks appeared on the battlefield faster than German guns could destroy them. American logistics exceed our tactical assumptions, Stemmermann reported to battalion headquarters, his voice betraying growing concern. Enemy replacement rate negates our kill ratios. Request instructions for sustained defensive operations against unlimited enemy armor. The response revealed German command's evolving understanding of American capabilities. American industrial capacity renders traditional attrition warfare ineffective. Recommend conservation of ammunition and strategic withdrawal to secondary defensive lines when enemy pressure becomes overwhelming. German technical intelligence finally began comprehending the scope of American achievement. While German tank production struggled to replace combat losses, American factories delivered Sherman tanks with industrial efficiency that treated battlefield attrition as acceptable production costs. American coordination capabilities, enabled by radio technology German forces lacked, transformed adequate individual tanks into components of weapons systems that exceeded German tactical capabilities. The Lorraine campaign marked the moment when German mockery evolved into professional recognition. American Sherman tanks had proven that technological superiority meant nothing against systematic industrial advantages, backed by coordination capabilities that German forces couldn't match. The laughter had been replaced by the silence of professionals recognizing superior methodology. December 16th, 1944, 5:30 in the morning, Ardennes Forest. The pre-dawn darkness carried the muffled sound of tracked vehicles moving through snow-covered pine forests as Germany launched its final desperate gamble in the West. Operation Wacht am Rhein, Hitler's last major offensive, deployed over 200,000 troops and 600 tanks in a surprise attack designed to split Allied forces and recapture the port of Antwerp. Oberfuhrer Wilhelm Mohnke crouched in the commander's cupola of his King Tiger tank, studying the frost-covered terrain through night vision equipment that represented Germany's technological edge over American forces. Behind him, the 1st SS Panzer Division rolled through the Ardennes, with coordination that reflected 4 years of combat experience and tactical expertise that had dominated European battlefields since 1939. American positions ahead, reported his gunner, Hauptscharführer Klaus Weber, voice carrying the confidence of veterans who had broken through Soviet lines from Moscow to Kursk. Range 1,200 meters, multiple Sherman tanks in defensive positions. They appear to be sleeping. The initial German assault achieved tactical surprise that briefly validated Wehrmacht confidence in superior planning and execution. American forces, caught off guard by the winter offensive, fell back in confusion that reminded German commanders of their early war successes. Sherman tanks abandoned their positions, leaving behind equipment and supplies that suggested panic rather than organized withdrawal. Mohnke's King Tiger destroyed 3 Sherman tanks in the first hour of combat. The massive 88mm gun penetrating American armor at ranges where return fire proved ineffective. German technical superiority, temporarily forgotten during the summer disasters, reasserted itself in engagements that followed traditional Panzer doctrine. Individual German tanks outfought individual American tanks with kill ratios that approached the glory days of 1940. Enemy resistance collapsing, Weber reported at 7:15, his voice betraying excitement that reflected the division's renewed confidence. American tanks withdrawing without coordination. Count 15 enemy vehicles destroyed, no losses to our company. For 48 hours, German mockery of American armor seemed justified by battlefield results. Sherman tanks burned in numbers that recalled German propaganda about Tommy Cookers and Ronson lighters. Wehrmacht radio traffic carried laughter and jokes about American combat effectiveness that echoed the confident dismissal of D-Day morning. Technical superiority appeared to matter again. But the American response revealed industrial capabilities that German commanders had underestimated even after 5 months of continuous combat. Weather that had grounded Allied air power cleared on December 19th, revealing logistical preparations that transformed the battlefield mathematics with terrifying efficiency. Through the crystal-clear winter sky, Mohnke watched American transport aircraft deliver supplies and reinforcements with coordination that defied everything German intelligence knew about Allied capabilities. C-47 transport planes landed on improvised airstrips, discharging replacement crews and spare parts that kept American armor operational despite German tactical successes. "Impossible," muttered Feldwebel Hans Richter from his position as radio operator. "We've destroyed over 60 American tanks in this sector alone, yet enemy armored strength appears unchanged." Where are they getting replacement vehicles? The answer lay in American industrial capacity that had redefined the mathematics of attrition warfare. While German tank production struggled to replace combat losses, American factories delivered Sherman tanks at rates exceeding German ability to inflict damage. Tank transporters carrying fresh armor appeared behind American lines faster than German forces could advance, creating tactical situations where German technical superiority proved meaningless against American logistics. By December 22nd, the German offensive had stalled against American resistance that seemed to multiply rather than diminish under Wehrmacht pressure. Mohnke's division, which had advanced 30 kilometers in the first 2 days, found itself surrounded by Sherman tanks that appeared with coordination, timing that German radio capabilities couldn't match. American coordination exceeds our intelligence estimates, Mohnke reported to Corps headquarters, his voice betraying growing concern about their tactical situation. Enemy tanks respond to our movements with timing that suggests communication capabilities we don't understand. Every time we destroy American armor, replacement vehicles appear within hours. The psychological impact on German tank crews reflected their growing understanding that temporary tactical success meant nothing against American industrial resilience. Wehrmacht veterans who had dominated battlefields from Poland to Russia watched their technical advantages negated by logistics that could replace American losses faster than German forces could inflict them. American Sherman tanks demonstrated capabilities that violated German assumptions about Allied weaknesses. Radio coordination allowed American forces to concentrate firepower against German positions while maintaining tactical flexibility that German communication limitations couldn't match. Individual Sherman tanks might burn under German fire, but the industrial capacity they represented proved unstoppable. By December 26th, the German offensive had failed catastrophically. Wehrmacht units that had achieved initial tactical success found themselves surrounded by American armor that appeared with mechanical precision, reflecting industrial methodology applied to battlefield tactics. The Battle of the Bulge revealed that German technical superiority could achieve temporary victories but could not overcome American systematic advantages in production, logistics, and coordination. The winter offensive had been Germany's last opportunity to prove that individual tank superiority could defeat industrial capacity. American Sherman tanks had demonstrated once again that adequate technology, backed by superior logistics, would defeat superior technology limited by inadequate production. The laughter died in the Ardennes snow, replaced by the silence of professionals recognizing their final defeat. March 7th, 1945, 2:15 in the afternoon, Remagen Bridge. The Ludendorff Railroad Bridge spanning the Rhine River trembled under the weight of approaching Sherman tanks as Lieutenant Karl Friesenhahn pressed the detonator for the third time. Nothing. The explosives that should have dropped the bridge into Germany's last natural defensive barrier had failed, leaving intact the final gateway into the Reich's industrial heartland. From his Tiger tank concealed in the woods east of Remagen, Hauptmann Wilhelm Bake watched American armor streaming across the bridge with mechanical precision that reflected industrial coordination capabilities German forces had never possessed. His radio crackled with desperate reports from scattered German units attempting to organize counterattacks against the American bridgehead. Enemy armored strength exceeds all estimates, reported Obergefreiter Franz Weber from his position as radio operator. Conservative count places over 200 Sherman tanks across the Rhine already, with more crossing every hour. American engineers constructing additional bridges upstream and downstream of our position. The sight that greeted German defenders violated every assumption about defensive warfare that Wehrmacht doctrine had taught for 20 years. American engineering units deployed pontoon bridges across the Rhine with efficiency that seemed to mock German efforts at demolition. Tank transporters carrying fresh Sherman tanks appeared on roads leading to the crossing sites, delivering armor faster than German artillery could destroy the improvised bridges. Bake's Tiger destroyed its first Sherman tank at 1,100 meters, the 88mm gun penetrating the American vehicle's frontal armor in a spectacular fireball that briefly satisfied German expectations about technical superiority. His second shot knocked out another Sherman at 900 meters, validating German confidence in individual combat excellence, even in desperate circumstances. But American response demonstrated coordination capabilities that rendered individual German tactical success meaningless. Within minutes of Bake's first shot, 12 Sherman tanks concentrated fire on his position, with timing that suggested communication capabilities far beyond German understanding. American tank crews shared targeting information instantly, coordinated mutual support automatically, and maintained tactical coordination across distances where German radios produced only static. "Impossible coordination," muttered Feldwebel Hans Richter from his position as gunner. "Every American tank knows exactly where we are positioned. They're concentrating fire faster than we can relocate our position." The American bridgehead expanded with methodical efficiency that reflected industrial planning applied to military operations. Sherman tanks established defensive positions with mechanical precision, while engineering units constructed supply lines capable of sustaining major armored operations east of the Rhine. German counterattacks, poorly coordinated due to communication limitations, arrived piecemeal and were destroyed in detail by American forces that fought as components of a unified system. German civilians fleeing westward carried reports that revealed the psychological impact of American industrial warfare on the Reich's population. Factory workers who had built panzer tanks watched Sherman tanks roll through streets where German armor had once seemed invincible. The irony was profound. American mass production was invading the homeland of German engineering excellence. Reports from Cologne sector, Weber announced at 4:30, his voice betraying exhaustion that reflected weeks of continuous retreat. American armor advancing at speeds exceeding our ability to establish defensive positions. Enemy coordination capabilities render traditional defensive tactics ineffective. By evening, American forces had established an impregnable bridgehead 15 kilometers deep and 20 kilometers wide on the eastern bank of the Rhine. German attempts to contain the breakthrough failed catastrophically as American armor advanced with coordination that German radio capabilities couldn't match. Tank units from different American divisions integrated seamlessly, sharing intelligence and coordinating fires through communication networks that enabled unprecedented battlefield control. The capture of Remagen Bridge demonstrated American engineering capabilities that German forces had never comprehended. While German doctrine emphasized destroying bridges to slow enemy advances, American methodology emphasized building bridges faster than enemies could destroy them. Industrial capacity had redefined the mathematics of river crossing operations, transforming natural obstacles into temporary inconveniences. German technical intelligence reports, filed after the Rhine crossing, acknowledged capabilities that Wehrmacht doctrine had never envisioned. American coordination and logistics exceed our tactical assumptions. Enemy industrial capacity enables replacement of losses at rates that render attrition warfare ineffective. Traditional defensive strategies prove inadequate against systematic industrial advantages. The psychological impact on German defenders reflected their growing understanding that they faced not just enemy army, but enemy industrial methodology made manifest in coordinated armored warfare. American Sherman tanks advanced through Germany with mechanical precision that treated tactical obstacles as production problems to be solved through systematic application of industrial resources. Wehrmacht after-action reports from the Rhine crossing marked the moment when German mockery transformed into professional acknowledgement of systematic defeat. American Sherman tanks had proven conclusively that adequate technology, backed by superior coordination and unlimited logistics, would defeat superior technology limited by inadequate production and communication capabilities. The laughter had been replaced by the silence of a nation recognizing the approach of industrial conquest. April 1st, 1945, 9:30 in the morning, Ruhr Pocket. The industrial heart of the Reich lay trapped within a shrinking circle of American and British armor as Generaloberst Walter Model studied the tactical map in his underground command bunker near Düsseldorf. Red arrows marked the positions of American Sherman tanks that had completed the encirclement of 325,000 German troops, cutting off Germany's most vital manufacturing region from the rest of the crumbling Reich. Model commanded Army Group B, the remnants of Germany's Western armies now compressed into a pocket measuring barely 60 kilometers at its widest point. His radio operator, Hauptmann Klaus Weber, maintained contact with scattered German units through transmissions that revealed the scope of their industrial catastrophe. American armored strength continues increasing, Weber reported, voice betraying the exhaustion of commanders who had fought continuous retreats since Normandy. Intelligence estimates place over 1,200 Sherman tanks surrounding our positions. 1,200 tanks, Herr Generaloberst. We have fewer than 80 operational panzers remaining. The irony was profound and bitter. German factory workers, who had manufactured the panzer tanks that once dominated European battlefields, now watched American Sherman tanks roll through the streets of Essen, Dortmund, and Bochum. The cities that had produced Germany's most advanced armor were being conquered by American mass production, made manifest in coordinated armored warfare. Through his bunker's observation periscope, Model watched American Sherman tanks advance with mechanical precision through the Krupp steelworks, their olive-drab hulls moving past the assembly lines where German Tiger tanks had been built. American industrial methodology was literally overrunning German engineering excellence, demonstrating the superiority of systematic mass production over individual technical achievement. Reports from Essen sector announced Major Franz Richter, Model's intelligence officer. American forces have occupied the Krupp factories. German workers report that American tank crews are examining our production facilities with professional interest. Enemy appears to be studying our manufacturing methods. The psychological impact on German defenders proved as devastating as the material losses. Wehrmacht veterans, who had once mocked American armor as inferior, now faced the reality that Sherman tanks represented an industrial system that had outproduced, outcoordinated, and ultimately overwhelmed German technical superiority. American coordination capabilities, enabled by radio technology German forces lacked, had transformed adequate individual tanks into components of weapons systems that exceeded German tactical capabilities. Model's final radio transmissions to OKW headquarters captured the transformation in German military thinking. American industrial capacity renders traditional resistance futile. Enemy coordination and logistics create tactical situations that German doctrine cannot address. Recommend immediate negotiation of surrender terms to prevent unnecessary casualties. The response from Berlin reflected the Reich's desperate refusal to acknowledge industrial reality. Resistance must continue. New wonder weapons will restore German superiority. Model must hold positions at all costs. But wonder weapons could not overcome the mathematics of American mass production. Sherman tanks advanced through the Ruhr with systematic efficiency that treated German defensive positions as production problems to be solved through coordinated application of industrial resources. American logistics delivered ammunition, fuel, and spare parts with reliability that German forces had never achieved, enabling sustained operations that gradually compressed the pocket despite fierce German resistance. By April 10th, the Ruhr pocket had shrunk to 20 kilometers in diameter, with American Sherman tanks controlling every major industrial facility in Germany's manufacturing heartland. German units trapped within the encirclement faced ammunition shortages that reflected their nation's collapsed logistics, while American forces maintained operations through supply networks that functioned with industrial precision. Fuel exhaustion reported by all units, Weber announced during Model's final staff conference. Ammunition critical, medical supplies non-existent. American coordination prevents any breakthrough attempts. Continued resistance serves no military purpose. The encirclement of the Ruhr demonstrated the complete reversal of military fortunes that American industrial capacity had achieved. German engineering excellence, concentrated in the Reich's most advanced manufacturing centers, had been defeated by American industrial methodology applied to armored warfare. Sherman tanks that German crews had once dismissed as inferior had proven that adequate technology, backed by superior logistics, would defeat superior technology limited by inadequate production. German technical intelligence reports filed during the final days of the Ruhr Pocket acknowledged capabilities that Wehrmacht doctrine had never envisioned. American coordination, logistics, and industrial capacity create systematic advantages that render individual technical superiority irrelevant. Traditional German tactical excellence proves inadequate against coordinated mass production warfare. The factories that had produced Germany's most advanced tanks now served as monuments to American industrial victory. Sherman tanks positioned in the courtyards of Krupp steelworks symbolized the triumph of systematic mass production over individual engineering achievement. The mockery had ended. In its place came the silence of industrial defeat, the sound of American Sherman tanks rolling through the heart of German manufacturing excellence. April 25, 1945, 11:15 in the morning, Elbe River. The spring sun reflected off the steel hulls of American Sherman tanks, positioned on the western bank, as Oberst Hans Krebs approached the Soviet lines under a white flag of truce. Behind him lay the ruins of Berlin, where the Reich Chancellery bunker held the last remnants of German leadership. Ahead stretched the river, where American and Soviet forces had linked up, completing the encirclement of Nazi Germany. Major Wilhelm Stemmermann crouched in the commander's cupola of his Tiger tank, one of perhaps 50 operational German armoured vehicles remaining in the entire Berlin defence sector. Through his periscope, he watched American Sherman tanks maintaining positions that placed their 75mm guns within artillery range of the Reich's capital. The irony was complete. Tanks that German crews had mocked as inferior 11 months earlier now held Germany's fate in their mechanical grasp. American armour strength in this sector, estimated at 400 Sherman tanks, reported his radio operator, Feldwebel Klaus Weber, voice hollow with the exhaustion of total defeat. Soviet forces report similar numbers on the eastern approaches. We are completely surrounded by the tanks we once laughed at. The transformation was complete and devastating. German panzer crews, who had entered France confident in their technical superiority, now faced the reality that Sherman tanks had contributed decisively to their nation's destruction, not through individual combat excellence, but through systematic industrial advantages that had rendered German tactical superiority meaningless. Stemmermann's Tiger tank represented the pinnacle of German armoured engineering: 150mm of frontal armour, an 88mm gun capable of destroying any Allied tank at extreme ranges, and crew training that embodied 5 years of combat experience. Yet this technical masterpiece sat immobilized by fuel shortages, while American Sherman tanks operated through supply networks that had functioned with industrial precision throughout the war. Final transmission from Wehrmacht High Command, Weber announced at noon, his voice breaking with emotion that reflected Germany's complete military collapse. All units ordered to cease resistance. Unconditional surrender effective immediately. The war is over. Through the smoky haze of burning Berlin, Stemmermann watched American Sherman tanks maintaining their positions with the patient efficiency that had characterized American armored operations since Normandy. These tanks that German intelligence had dismissed as adequate at best had proven that industrial methodology would defeat engineering excellence, that coordination would triumph over individual superiority, and that systematic mass production would overwhelm technical achievement. The final German assessments, compiled during the last weeks of the war, acknowledged capabilities that Wehrmacht doctrine had never envisioned. American Sherman tanks had demonstrated that adequate technology, backed by superior logistics, coordination, and industrial capacity, would defeat superior technology limited by inadequate production and communication systems. "We knew how to build better tanks," admitted Generaloberst Heinz Guderian in his final report to OKW. "But the Americans knew how to make them work together. We focused on individual technical superiority, while they created systematic advantages that rendered our achievements irrelevant." The numbers told the story of industrial victory over technical excellence. American factories had produced 49,324 Sherman tanks during the war, each equipped with sophisticated radio equipment that transformed individual fighting vehicles into components of the world's first battlefield network. German production had managed barely 25,000 medium and heavy tanks, most lacking the communication equipment their own doctrine demanded. German tank crews, who had laughed at American armor on Normandy's beaches, now understood that Sherman tanks represented something far more dangerous than individual technical capability. They embodied an industrial system, could outproduce, outcoordinate, and ultimately overwhelm any opponent through systematic application of mass production methodology to warfare. The psychological transformation was complete. Where once German radio nets had carried mockery and jokes about Tommy Cookers and Ronson lighters, now came only silence. The silence of professionals, recognizing systematic defeat, the silence of engineers, acknowledging that their individual excellence meant nothing against American industrial coordination. As Soviet and American forces completed their link-up at the Elbe, hundreds of Sherman tanks positioned along both banks of the river served as monuments to American industrial achievement. These tanks that German crews had dismissed as inferior had proven decisive not through superior individual performance, but through superior systematic capabilities. The laughter had died completely, replaced by the silence of a nation recognizing that mockery had given way to conquest. American Sherman tanks had rolled into Berlin not as individual fighting vehicles, but as representatives of an industrial methodology that had redefined warfare itself. In the end, the electromagnetic waves that connected every Sherman tank had proved more powerful than the armor-piercing shells fired by German guns.